Omicrons in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes can take some really mediocre teams and make them pretty damn amazing, or slightly less mediocre. And the problem with Omicrons is that they are an incredibly elusive and difficult to acquire material. So I want to do a video today going over sort of the first 10 Omicrons that you should be applying in the sort of early to mid game. This should help you save some Zetas and give you some guidance around some of the better teams to invest in that pivotal early part of the game. It can result in more wins in GAC and better rewards for your roster. I'm going to start this off with the characters that I would personally do. Now, we're going to have to shape this just a little bit before we begin. Most notably, people have different priorities in this game and where they like to excel in. I personally am a guy that absolutely loves going into GAC or Grand Arena Championship and getting my victories there. That is not the priority for everybody. So if you want to take this list and sort of sift through and find the areas of the game that you prefer to enjoy, be my guest. But as I am a GAC player, first and foremost, I'm going to start off with who I think everybody's first GAC Omicron should be. Savage Opress. Here is my boy Savage Opress. He is an easy to farm, easily acquirable and easy to gear character in this game. You can farm him using squad arena shipment tokens. Very, very easy. 400 of those tokens will get you 10 shards. You need 330 in order to get him to 7 stars. Now, his Omicron is useful, and there's a couple of reasons why. I'm sure there's going to be some people in the comment section that are saying, why is it not Wampa? We will get to Wampa, don't you worry, ladies and gentlemen. Mostly, I prefer Savage for one very, very pivotal reason. Savage Opress is more flexible than Wampa in the terms of you can use Savage as a defensive team as well as an offensive team. Savage Opress in the very early game on my free-to-play alt account was responsible for more holds than anything I've ever seen in any of my accounts over the years. In the early game, I'm talking your early Carbonite, this guy will get defensive holds like nothing. He will surprise people with much bigger rosters. Let's talk about his Omicron then. His Omicron is under the Brute Unique. It reads thus: Savage is gaining 50% more defense, max health, offense, and 30 speed. At the start of the encounter, he's going to gain 2 stacks of Resilient Defense. Now, Resilient Defense is basically a taunt. At the end of his turn, Savage is going to gain 2 stacks of Resilient Defense and 10% turn meter to a maximum of 50% for each debuff on other Sith allies. Whenever Savage is critically hit, he gains 16% health steal and offense stacking to a maximum of 160%, and all other Sith allies gain 4% health steal and offense stacking to a maximum of 40%. So what this means is, as he's getting crit, he is going to be raising his damage output, but he's also incredibly survivable, and he can keep himself in the game with that health steal. If you're throwing him in with other Sith, which we will get to in a moment, it also passes a more minor benefit to them as well. He also recovers 15% health and protection, and gains 15% turn meter until the end of the encounter whenever he is critically hit. So he is able to survive and take multiple turns. Whilst Savage has got Resilient Defense, he has 50% defense per stack and is inflicted with Vulnerable. Now, what Vulnerable does is it guarantees a critical hit. So it's automatically going to trigger that health steal boost, that offense boost, all the time. He's also going to be constantly triggering that health and protection recovery as well as gaining turn meter. It's a really, really useful little interaction. It also can't be dispelled or prevented. Whenever Savage gains Taunt, he's going to dispel it and gain 2 stacks of Resilient Defense instead. Now, in reality, what this really means is that Savage turns into a tank that is going to be ramping damage and survivability, and he can take out some really good key teams. It also plays into the long game, so he's early, easy to acquire, easy to gear, doesn't need Chirotech unless you take him to relic levels, very easy to star up, and also he will fit into later game teams. So this one Omicron investment will be paying dividends for years across your GAC endeavors, basically. Let's talk about some of the teams that he can deal with, and this is again why I feel he is a more ideal candidate than Wampa. First of all, let's just have a look over here. This gives me no end of fun. This is a long time ago. This is my early game when I was about, 2 months into this free-to-play account, setting this guy on defense. And look at him. He's just gear 11, 1 Zeta, 1 Omicron, and 2 level 1 units. Well, okay, there's Omega Fugitive at level 50. And he held off against a Zated Vader with a Relic Basti and Candrist. It's a weird team, I know, but based on the gear discrepancies alone, he should have cleared through there. He was only able to kill the side ads, didn't kill Savage. Then he took him Mace and Grandmaster Yoda and Snips as well, also failed. Then he took him Phasma with Zeta and Crew, and he still wasn't able to kill this unit. Like, getting 3 holds immediately can basically be the massive difference between winning and losing a GAC. He was never able to clear through that south wall, and I have so many occasions where this is the case. He eventually managed to kill it using Great Mothers, and that's just by using tech. You know, using Great Mothers, you can reduce the max health, get rid of all the protection, completely nullifies that Savage Omicron. Even here, you can see how it held off against CLS. Sure, it's with Princess Leia and R2-D2, but still pretty good. And then Bounty Hunters, this is definitely just the wrong team to be using against this Savage, but you can get plenty of holds, and my early GAC is absolutely riddled with holds like this. So what teams can he take on then, offensively speaking? Well, it's actually a surprising amount of teams, and funnily enough, it is a lot of the same teams that Wampa deals very well with. Now, I do want to phrase, of course, right now in the game at the time of this recording, Wampa does have a rather massive benefit in the Wampa-focused Datacron. I don't want to let that sway my decision, because that FDC is going to disappear soon enough, and then we'll not be with that Datacron going forward, so I don't want to misrepresent based on temporary benefits from Datacrons, okay? But Savage, pretty decent win rate against full team of GG. Now, this isn't using Stap and stuff like that, but that's still impressive. Really solid win rates against a full CLS squad. He can solo these squads just by timing them out. They simply can't deal with him, and he ramps enough offense over time to take them out. Same thing with Phasma, unable to get through. Ewoks, unable to get through. What else is useful? Iden, another team that Wampa quite often counters, is Iden Versio, who has her own Omicron, which is a decent Omicron nonetheless, and he's able to solo that as well. Old Republic, Phoenix, now granted this isn't a Phoenix with C-Rex, but still do it. Bad Batch has capabilities of clearing out through as well as a lot of early game sort of rebel teams over here, and even Admiral Radis, which a lot of people might be pushing for Profundity. Sure, they'd be better off going for Executor, but that's not the not the topic of discussion today. So he has a lot of viability as a solo person on offense, as well as having viability on defense in the very, very early game. The one last reason why I prefer to go for Savage over Wampa is because Wampa is a lot harder to actually get shards of in the early game. You need to be using either your Get 1 or you need to be using Mark II raid currency, and you really don't want to use Mark II raid currency to try and star up your Wampa. Now, conversely, Wampa is a requirement for Galactic Legends, essentially. For Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, you do need to have Wampa in your roster at Relic 5, so there is a payoff there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be going for that Omicron before Savage, in my opinion. That being said, Wampa would be the very next Omicron that I would choose to put on, for many of the same reasons. Wampa is a phenomenal Omicron, granted right now being absolutely skyrocketed through the stratosphere thanks to the focus Datacron. I'm not going to talk too much to that because it is going to disappear, and I don't want to lean into a decision making based on that FDC being in the game. Wampa is really phenomenal. The great thing about Wampa, it's a solo character. You just take in Wampa on her own and you're able to take down a lot of teams. Let's talk about it. It's under the Cornered Beast unique. Whilst in Grand Arenas, Wampa is going to gain 100% tenacity. That tenacity boost is actually more important than it might seem. Some of the things that can really mess up Wampa are stuff like stuns, shocks, heal immunity, that sort of thing. Even ability block, to a certain degree, can mess him up. And the reason why this 100% tenacity at the start is important is because if you are taking Wampa up against a team that doesn't have tenacity down, sometimes you are very, very dependent on resisting an immediate stun or resisting an immediate heal immunity or a shock or an ability block, just so that you can survive until your first turn and then start to roll. Tenacity is actually a sleeper build within Wampa. Very, very important, don't neglect it. If there are no other active allies at the start of battle, Wampa is going to gain a whopping 75% defense, max health, max protection, and offense, doubled if there's only one active enemy at the start of battle. The great thing about this Omicron is that in the early days, well, no, not in the early days, in the later days, CG kind of made sure to put in like an anti-galactic legend clause in a lot of these Omicrons so that they don't work versus GLs, to try and control where the counters exist. That isn't apparent with Wampa. This will work against GLs as a solo. Not only that, this will work great as a cleanup to a solo GL, because if you take him in versus just a GL that's left alive, that stat gain is doubled all of a sudden. That means he can take down solo things like a solo Jabba and a solo JMK, and probably even to a certain degree a solo Leia. It is, and C, he destroys C as well. So he has that GL punch-up ability, which is really, really nice. Doesn't exist on Savage. Whenever Wampa is damaged by an attack, inflict 2 stacks of damage over time for 3 turns on the attacking enemy, which can't be evaded or resisted. The useful thing about that is Wampa does more damage the more dots that are on the field. So every time they are getting hit, we are inflicting 2 stacks of damage over time for 3 turns. That can ramp up and just increasing our damage all the time, which is really, really great. Plus, the cooldown of Furious Foe is reduced by 1, and you gain 30% stacking tenacity until the end of the encounter. So when we put it all together, Wampa has got massive stat boosts, will constantly be getting more and more tenacity as the battle goes on, so that the chances of them landing any sort of debuff is going to decrease unless they have tenacity down. Then it's going to be an issue. As well as you're constantly lowering the cooldown of Furious Foe. And the reason that's important is Furious Foe is one of the best ways of ramping offense in this game. Essentially, you use it, you can inflict heal immunity to all enemies, which is great for 2 turns, can't be evaded, can be resisted. Wampa is going to gain accuracy, which on surface level is not great, but there are certain scenarios where more accuracy is useful. 40% crit chance, so we're guaranteeing critical hits, and 40% offense, stacking until the end of the encounter. We also gain a bunch of turn meter, and yeah, the great thing about this is this stacking offense has got no limit. It's got absolutely no limit, and it's a multiplicative benefit. So the longer the battle goes on, the more offense you are going to be ramping. It shoots through the roof. You can do absolutely nutty, insane damage thanks to this thing constantly being reset. Really, really useful. It's got a cooldown of 4, so every time they hit you, it decreases that cooldown. Quite often, you're just using it back to back to back to back to back to back. And Wampa is then so hard to kill thanks to all the extra defense, all the extra health, all the extra protection. Really, really good Omicron. This thing can solo C, even without that Datacron, because C can't link him. He has opportunities to solo other GLs in certain scenarios, particularly in 3v3, things like Jabba he has a chance against. But generally, just a really, really powerful early game unit. The only downside to this, like I said, is the fact that getting the shards of Wampa is a lot harder than getting the shards of Savage. So, takes a while to get up to the relic levels. Without the relic levels, without the stars, Wampa is just not as effective. And you also have no opportunity to place Wampa on defense, because unfortunately, you need to be solo for this to work. Okay, the Omicron basically turns off if you do not have a solo Wampa. Now, there are some situations where you could do something silly like place him in a team or her in a team with weak supporting allies in the hopes that they defeat the allies, lose the battle, and then go in and they have to face an Omicron Wampa on defense. I don't advise it. It's like you'd have to be foolish to make that happen. So it just has no defensive viability, unfortunately. Still a very, very powerful Omicron, and one everybody should be getting. We are going to switch things right up now and step completely away from Grand Arena. Padawan Obi-Wan. It might seem a little bit different, a little bit out there, but generally speaking, for early game rosters, I truly believe that Padawan Obi-Wan's Omicron gives you massive, massive benefits in this game. Let me be clear. It's on his unique Nobility and Restraint, and this only applies to Conquest. And I know, normally I would not recommend this at all for most people's accounts, especially if you are a late game roster. You don't need the extra support from this Omicron. It's a quality of life Omicron. In the early game, however, this Omicron can make conquests so much more manageable and easy for you to progress through that I can only recommend it. Let's talk about what it does. Whilst in Conquest, allies gain 10% max health, max protection, and 30 speed. Allies gain an additional 10% max health and protection for each relic amplifier level that Padawan Obi-Wan has. Cut the offense of all Sith enemies in half until the end of battle, and he has a 50% chance to take a bonus turn whenever an enemy ends their turn. That means whenever an enemy takes a turn, he has a chance to interrupt. Every single time. It's so useful being able to interrupt enemies in Conquest and just be like, let me just hold you there. Let me just hold you there. And because it's like a bonus turn and not, say, gain 100% turn meter, it means this bonus turn can't be interrupted. He's just going to be getting it. He's also lowering the damage of Sith teams, and there are quite a lot of Sith teams in Conquest. When Padawan Obi-Wan starts this bonus turn, allies recover 75% health and gain 75% offense for 2 turns. That includes him, by the way. And enemies are inflicted with buff immunity, heal immunity for 2 turns, which can't be resisted. If Padawan Obi-Wan's stamina is above 50% or greater, whenever an ally uses a special ability, they inflict accuracy down, critical chance down, critical damage down, defense down, evasion down, offense down, potency down, speed down, stagger, and tenacity down on the target enemy for 2 turns, which can't be evaded. Can be resisted, but cannot be evaded. So what this means is, if you've got more than 50% stamina on Padawan Obi-Wan, you more or less apply every single debuff in the game that is non-unique debuffs. So you're not doing stuff like fear, for example, or disarm, but you're doing most of these debuffs. And the reasons that that's useful is because Conquest often has a lot of feats that say inflict 500,000 accuracy downs. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but this one character is able to go in and spread the use or spread the application of these debuffs very quickly. And it doesn't require it to be, say, in a Galactic Republic Jedi team. You can throw him in any team, just as a +1, and he'll be able to pass those benefits to the entire team. We're not even done yet, though. If Padawan Obi-Wan's stamina is 50% or greater, whenever he uses a special ability, all allies are going to gain accuracy up, critical chance up, critical damage up, defense up, evasion up, offense up, potency up, speed up, and tenacity up for 2 turns. So, just like the debuffs, he has got a similar benefit for buffs for the entire team. So again, he is able to help us gain those conquest feats to gain certain numbers of buffs multiple times very quickly. Sure, it's a bit of a downer that it is tied to him having 50% more stamina, but it still massively cuts the time in which you have to grind out certain feats. It just makes your life easier and can sometimes really help with difficult to acquire feats that you might not have the roster depth to get otherwise. One Omicron can help you solve all of those problems. Now, apart from the benefits that it gives to Conquest, what I will say is that Padawan Obi-Wan is a great early game farm anyway because of the Duel of the Fates era battle. Well, not era battle, assault battle that comes around once a month. This one event, which requires Padawan Obi-Wan and Master Qui-Gon Jinn, you can use OG Qui-Gon Jinn, but I wouldn't recommend it. Those 2 people can get you one of the greatest sources to things like Girder keypads at the Relic 9 tier, but a bunch of signal data, mod mats, credits, shards, all sorts of good business just for investing in those. He's also just a really good PvP unit under Queen Amidala, which will obviously come much later into the game. Overall, as an early game Omicron investment, I think that Padawan Obi-Wan is an absolute bargain. Back over to GAC Omicrons now, and I'm going to go with Qui-Gon Jinn, the OG. What I find great about this is some of these Omicrons here are old school Omicrons that have lasted the test of time. Wampa. We've got Savage, Wampa, Qui-Gon Jinn. These are all really early game, like in terms of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, early introduced Omicrons that still hold weight to this day. His is a GAC Omicron, and it will last you for the entire time that you play GAC. It's a very useful Omicron. Let's go over what it does. In Grand Arena, at the start of battle, if there are no galactic legends and all allies are Jedi, all other allies instead gain offense equal to 30 times their speed, doubled whilst they have foresight, and can't be evaded whilst Qui-Gon Jinn is... can't be defeated whilst Qui-Gon Jinn is active. So let's break down that first part. Basically, you're going to be passing offense to the team based on a speed modifier. That part is actually... it's kind of meh. It's really not the big deal. Being able to protect your allies makes for an interesting strategy debate. It makes it harder for the enemy to just be like, oh, I'm just going to kill the big powerful hitters in the team, so I don't have to worry about the damage. If they don't have a GL, if they're not taking in a GL to tackle a Qui-Gon Jinn team, they're going to have to defeat Qui-Gon Jinn first. There are some few exceptions to that. For example, bounty hunters. OG Mando can disintegrate units, for example. So it adds a strategy element to it to keep your team alive and forces them to kill Qui-Gon Jinn. If they do that and you set up the team with someone like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Jedi Knight Anakin, you create a scenario where you get an AoE which can completely obliterate the opposition, and it is hilarious. Now, I have to take a moment just to show you guys this. This was nerfed, and you'll see why. You'll see why this was nerfed, but this was the original introduction of the Qui-Gon Jinn Omicron and why it had to be nerfed just a little bit, and they added that GL clause because this is what we could do when this Omicron was first introduced. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren pokes on Obi-Wan and the whole team dies. That's how it used to be. That's how it used to be. And it's not because it was any more powerful back then. Well, I mean, obviously it was more powerful back then, but it's just because of that GL clause. That's why they introduced that GL clause. They've taken out all of the benefits, essentially, if the enemy takes in a GL. It's hilarious stuff. So essentially, Qui-Gon Jinn, they're saying he can't gain damage, immunity, or stealth, so he's kind of forced to be out in the open, and he can't be revived. When Qui-Gon Jinn is defeated, all allies recover 100% of their health and protection, and they gain 400% of Qui-Gon Jinn's offense for 2 turns. That's why you saw that Anakin blow the field like that, because he is passing 4 times his offense. And even mine, that's only Relic 5, and it's got garbage tier mods right now. He's got 5,400. So if you're passing 4 times that, we're getting 20,000, well over 20,000 offense past the whole team for 2 turns. It is a massive, massive damage increase. And don't forget that they also gain foresight after a unit dies, which is going to increase their damage output. You throw that in with Jedi Knight Anakin, if he's in a full squad of Galactic Republic Jedi, when he takes his bonus turn, he does 100% more damage in his next attack. So you put it all together, and you essentially have a nuke with Jedi Knight Anakin. They defeat Qui-Gon Jinn, you blow the board. And the great thing is, that works both offensively and defensively. He's an early game character. You know, you can get Qui-Gon Jinn immediately. He's easy to gear. He's got very, very low gear requirements. Doesn't even require any chirotech. Nothing like that. Unless you take him to relic levels, obviously, and it just gives you an immediate benefit for a lot of early game characters. Now, obviously, there is a little bit difference. Not everybody's going to have Ki-Adi-Mundi, but it works even without Ki-Adi-Mundi, and it can take out some good teams. You can take out things like, in 3v3, Rex 5s. So Rex with 5s and Captain Rex with the Omicron. Qui-Gon Jinn is a good counter to that. You can do really good damage. There's a bunch of teams where you can use this as a team that just needs to kill 1 or 2 units, or take out some key units, or even sometimes just blow the board. So this is like a long-term, high dividend paying Omicron that you can get very, very early on. It is a useful Omicron to have. Works defensively, works offensively. Easy, low-hanging fruit is exactly what I like in this game. We are mixing things up now, and we're going to my first TW Omicron. Now, I will say that when it comes to TW Omicrons, there are 2 that I would probably say are the most important primary ones to get on the early game that completely transform teams. The first would be, in my opinion, Kelleran Beq. The reason I'm saying Kelleran Beq is because currently Kelleran Beq is absolutely phenomenal in the new raid and can get you 300,000 points. I've got a bunch of videos on early game raid teams, and I tell you now, raid is the best place to invest in the early game in order to help develop your roster at a faster pace outside of Fleet Arena. So having a good Kelleran Beq in the early game will pay dividends straight away. And when you place his Omicron on for this TW team, he will give you benefits even at low gear. Particularly if you've already invested in things like Padawan Obi-Wan and Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Maybe you've got Padawan Obi-Wan's Omicron. So you've already got some Galactic Republic Jedi to get benefits from his unique. Let's talk about it. Oh, his leadership, sorry. So So whilst in territory wars and there are no galactic legends and all allies are Galactic Republic Jedi, at the start of battle, allies gain an additional 5% offense for each stack of Padawan lessons on them, doubled while they have foresight. So Padawan's lesson is essentially giving us additional damage boosts right out the gate. Let's see where it is. Just grab it here. Yeah. So for each stack of Padawan lessons, you're gaining 20 defense pen and 5% offense per stack. It's based on how much protection Kelleran Beq has at the start of the game. So essentially, this Omicron immediately is doubling the offense boosts of that. It will scale well. The more protection that you gain, generally speaking through having more relic levels and better modding on him, will translate into much more offense for the team straight away. Whenever an ally with protection uses an ability on their turn, call another random ally to assist. The first time each ally loses all protection, they recover 50% turn meter and gain 150% bonus protection for 3 turns, gain 10% crit chance, crit damage and offense, plus an additional 2% for each stack of Padawan lessons on them. So it scales really well and it causes the team to be incredibly frustrating to deal with, increasing survivability and increasing damage output at the same time. Whilst Kelleran Beq is active, allies have got 500% defense. And whilst another ally has protection, Kelleran Beq cannot be defeated. So in early game TW encounters, and I know TW is not everybody's focus, but in early game TW encounters, you can have a wall of Kelleran Beq Galactic Republic Jedi. Maybe you've pushed for an Endurance fleet and you've got Jedi Knight Anakin and you've got Mace Windu and you've got the Poncho Bros, for example, under Kelleran Beq, and he is only gear 10. They can't defeat him until the other allies have lost all their protection. They've got 500% additional defense. They call additional assists. They do extra damage. They recover bonus protection and turn meter. It's a real pain to deal with in early TW. I still use this on defense quite a lot in my late game, end game TW guild. It's a great one to invest in. Not only that, Kelleran Beq is a requirement for Bo-Katan Mandalore, who is an absolutely fantastic legendary character to be going for. She's doing great things in this game, absolutely worth it, and you need him at Relic 7 for that. So long term, you're going to be making use of this. You'll be able to smatter it in with a bunch of the early game Galactic Republic Jedi that you are picking up anyway, either for the raid or for Duel of the Fates era battle or for other GAC teams. Super great. Now we are going to go back to back on the TW Omicrons, and the reason I'm putting Poggle here is because Poggle's early game Omicron is actually really good as well. You can see I don't even have it on this account, and the reason for that is when I was farming these teams on my main account, Geos were okay, but this Omicron didn't exist. By the time this Omicron was introduced into the game, we didn't get it because it wasn't part of our TW defensive setup, and now I'm so late game that this one doesn't have legs in the late game. There's a Droideka Omicron that is actually pretty good, but again, I wouldn't call that an early game Omni either. So this Hive Tactics, let's talk about it. Whilst in territory wars, if there are no enemy galactic legends and all allies are Geos, at the start of battle, the first time an ally is summoned, Geonosian allies gain Geonosian Brood until the end of battle, or they are defeated, which can't be copied, dispelled, or prevented. Now, what does Geonosian Brood do? Gives them 20% max health protection, offense, tenacity, and 10 speed for each Geonosian ally. That's huge. That's huge. You know? I don't know if the actual summon counts as an additional 20%. I don't think it does because technically speaking, it's not there at the start of battle. It gets summoned right after the start of battle. But even if it doesn't, that's still 100% additional max health, protection, and offense and tenacity, and an extra 50 speed. When this character is defeated, revive at 100% health protection and turn meter, excluding summons. This just makes Geos so much more difficult to deal with because they essentially have to kill Poggle the Lesser twice, and because they've got so much additional bulk to them and they're constantly health equalizing all the time, and they've got all that additional offense and speed. Early games, this thing will hold walls. Just like the Kelleran Beq team, this thing becomes so much more difficult than the original sum of their parts, basically. It's a huge, powerful Omicron. I just don't think it's got the legs for the long term. It still makes a big difference, okay? And the other good thing about it is you're going to want to be investing in Geonosians anyway, just because they help you unlock Wat Tambor, through Darkside Geonosis territory battles, which will be part of that early game progression for you. So it's not a bad thing to do anyway, because you're likely investing in Geonosians anyway. I personally would go for Kelleran Beq first, but this is a very powerful early game Omicron for TW. Next up, we are going back to GAC and we are looking at Traya. Traya is a great character with huge longevity in terms of PvP performance. She is really solid in GAC. Even today, I still use this in my endgame account. The only reason I put her down a little bit is simply because she's not a priority unit to farm, generally speaking, in the really early game. However, once you have progressed to a certain point, it can be useful to invest in her, because alongside Savage, who has his own Omicron, these two characters working together alongside Nihilus in 3v3 can defeat a lot of very powerful teams offensively speaking. We're talking things like Queen Amidala, for example, or Saw Gerrera. Really powerful teams, and anything below that tier struggles massively trying to defeat Traya. So you can use her both offensively and defensively to really great effect. And even if you were to be one-tapped on defense, generally speaking, Traya's leadership and the way it works will guarantee that the enemy is not really winning that battle with good banners unless they are overkilling it. So let's talk about what it actually does. It's on her Lord of Betrayal unique, and this is one of the things I actually really like about Traya's Omicron. It's not on her leadership, so you can actually throw her into other teams later on down the line, other Sith teams generally speaking, and she will provide additional benefits there. So whilst in Grand Arena, and there are no enemy Darkside Galactic Legends, very specific, Darkside Galactic Legends, Sith allies gain 40% crit damage, max health and offense. Nice bit of a stat boost. Whenever a Sith ally suffers a debuff, they gain 10% bonus protection stacking until the end of their next turn. So more survivability essentially. At the start of each Sith ally's turn, Traya dispels all debuffs on them, and all Sith allies gain 5% crit damage, health steal, max health and offense, stacking to a maximum of 100%. So you can see how this pairs really well with the earlier Savage Omicron. He is gradually increasing his offense and survivability, and she is amplifying that even further until the end of the encounter. When an allied Darth Talon is critically hit or inflicted with a debuff, Traya is going to gain 12% offense, stacking for 2 turns. Also pretty nice. When an allied Darth Nihilus, Scion, or Talon's health falls below 90% for the first time, their cooldowns are reset. That's kind of the icing on the cake for this team, because Nihilus in particular has an ability which can insta-kill, but it starts on a cooldown. It has a heavy cooldown. So if you throw her in a team with Nihilus and Nihilus drops below 90% health, which is very easy to do, he's immediately going to have his cooldowns reset and you can annihilate one of the enemy team, creating an immediate difference to the playing field very quickly. In fact, because this is on her unique, you can even take in Nihilus as a lead, which is really wild. Take in Nihilus as a lead over here, and the useful thing about this is he actually converts all protection into max health, which means it's very easy for the enemy to knock you below 90% health. It's not a great lead otherwise, but if you have, say, Nihilus lead with Savage and Traya as a 3v3 team, the enemy has to be very careful not to knock down that Nihilus below 90% health, otherwise it's going to be an immediate annihilate trigger, and one of their units is lost. In 3v3 in particular, that makes almost an insurmountable difference. It's a really cool Omicron. I am a big fan of Traya in general. I just wish she was just a little bit easier to get in the early game. You can do it, but it is going to cost you quite a heavy amount of Mark 1 raid currency. Still super cool. Next up, I recommend using Mace Windu as another territory war investment. Now, I'm doing this in the context of what are the Omicrons that we've already applied. Mace Windu can work very well under a Kelleran Beq team. Also, he is a very good fleet pilot now. It didn't used to be the case. The Endurance used to be the laughing stock of fleet, and now we've got Endurances that can take out any fleet in the game, which is really cool. I love that. So it's good to see that Mace has now got relevance once again. His Omicron is a TW Omicron. Let's talk about it. In Territory Wars, at the start of each light side ally's turn, a random enemy, excluding Galactic Legends, is inflicted with speed down for 1 turn and Shatter Point. So Shatter Point In case you don't know, the enemy gets this locked debuff. When they receive damage, it dispels Shatterpoint and reduces the defense, max health, and offense of that character by 10% for the rest of the encounter. Enemies can ignore taunt to target this unit. So basically, every single time that we take a turn, a random enemy is going to get Shatterpoint, gives us the opportunity to ignore taunts to hit that character, reduce their defense, max health, and offense by 10%. Really, really good. Okay, so also, when an ally damages an enemy with Shatterpoint, all allies are going to gain 5% turn meter. So these things are stacking all the time. If you think about it as well with Kelleran Beq team, you've got a team with mass assist, got a team with a lot of survivability, great damage output. You throw Mace in there as well. You've also got opportunities to reduce defense, max health, offense, and gain additional turn meter as well. It's just overall a really, really solid TW Omicron. And if you've already invested in getting Mace's ship up, perhaps you've gone for the Marauder so that you can start beating things like Executors and Leviathans and all that good business, it just makes sense to try and compound on the investments that you've already made in your roster. Next up, this is an Omicron that I feel has fallen off just a little bit in terms of competitive performance, but it still has its use. Mara Jade, the Emperor's Hand, she is a great character, truth be told, and in the long run, you'll be able to use her with Starkiller, but in the early game, she makes a real massive difference to how good your Palpatine operates in general. Now, Palpatine himself is a very easily attainable early game unit, and you can get her at 3 stars and throw her up to Gear 11. Actually, you can take it to Relics now, I guess. These days, you don't need a massive star level of investment in order to transform that Palpatine team. You can also, like I said, throw this TW Omicron to make a huge difference. On the Emperor's Hand unique, at the start of battle in Territory War, if the enemy leader is not a Galactic Legend, they lose 100% protection, 50% max protection, and Mara Jade gains 100% turn meter. So she immediately takes a turn at the start, and the entire enemy team is going to lose all their protection. Whenever an enemy unit is defeated, inflict vulnerable for 1 turn on a random enemy, which, as we know, guarantees critical hits, which can't be prevented, and allies gain 20% max protection. Love it. So essentially, it creates an environment right off the gate where the enemy has lost all of their protection unless they take in a Galactic Legend. If they've taken in a Galactic Legend, then it's already a bit of a win for you because you've gained a big level counter in early Territory Wars. So you can throw this in a Palpatine team with maybe Vader, Mara Jade, Thrawn potentially, even Piet if you've pushed for Executor, and you can create a very, very powerful start. If you think about how Palpatine's turn meter works, immediately getting a turn with Mara Jade basically means you can start turn meter trains right out of the gate, and the enemy can't prevent that unless they go in with a GL. It makes for a very good early game TW defensive wall and pays off in the long run because you'll want her for a Starkiller team later on anyway. She's a great character, and that's a great Omi. And finally, Droideka. Last TW Omicron and the last Omi that we'll be talking about today. The only reason I put Droideka low down is because, in my opinion, GG teams can wait a long time. It's not the same as the meta used to be. Early game, we used to rush for a Malevolence fleet quite early on, take advantage of GG, who used to be quite a powerful unit. Now it's a little harder to justify. Nonetheless, if you have pushed for a GG team and you do have Droideka, perhaps you were pushing for gas and wanted to use the droids instead, or yeah, push for gas, you need to use droids for the top tier. I was wondering about Padme for a second there, but this Omicron is actually pretty useful as well. It turns the GG team into a bit of a monster. So, in Territory Wars, and if all allies are Separatist droid, Droideka gains damage immunity for 1 turn at the start of the encounter, which can't be copied, dispelled, or prevented. Droideka also gains 1 stack of charge for 1 turn whenever another ally takes a turn. Now, charge is going to give him 5% offense per stack, and in a GG team, you are generating a lot of turn meter, which means lots and lots of turns for your droids, lots and lots of stacks of charge for your Droideka, lots and lots of damage. Whenever an ally is marked, Droideka gains 25% max health stacking until the end of the encounter, and the ally in the leader slot gains 20% turn meter, which means GG's going to be taking a lot of turns, putting out a lot of debuffs, and increasing the stacks of charge on that Droideka again. At the start of each turn, if Droideka has damage immunity, all allies are immune to daze and stun. The reason this is so good is that one of the top counters to GG before this Omicron was about was the original Bad Batch, and they would start off with an immediate AoE irresistible daze from Echo. This completely shuts it down, essentially. Completely shuts down Bad Batch as a counter. I say completely, there are still options, but more or less shuts down Bad Batch as a counter. Whilst Droideka is marked, all other allies have 25% potency and 25 speed. The first time Droideka is defeated whilst marked and an ally is active, revive all allies at the end of the turn, and then all allies recover 100% health. This essentially creates a trap where if you kill a Droideka that's marked and it's got an ally, you're in for a bad time. The whole team's coming back and they're going to gain 100% health, and you're going to really regret your decisions. At the start of Droideka's turn, all allies are also going to recover 10% health and protection. This thing is a real pain in the backside in early territory wars. It can create some absolutely horrific preloads if people are not paying attention, and can cause people a lot of headaches. It is a good Omicron to have. It's just most people, I feel, will not get this until a little bit later, which is why it's so low down on my list. Now that is the end of our Omicron discussion, but I did want to give one honourable mention, and that's going to be for Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. His Omicrons are TB-based, territory battles, and are only really applicable to players that are doing Rise of the Empire TB. Now there are a number of really, really powerful Rise of the Empire TB Omicrons, but Cal Kestis is probably the most useful to an early game account. He's not particularly early game, he's more sort of mid game, but provides a massive benefit to your accounts and to your guild. Essentially, in order to unlock the bonus planet of Zepho in Phase 2, you do the mission in Phase 2, you need to win a particular battle with Seer and either Jedi Knight Cal Kestis or OG Cal Kestis. You could do it with OG Cal Kestis, but Jedi Knight Cal is a lot easier and less RNG based. I have a video on how to beat that guide, how to beat that mission very, very easily without the use of these Omicrons. You can see I've got none of them. However, if your guild is struggling particularly with the Zepho unlock mission, the Whirlwind Slam Omicron on his first special will help you no end in that unlock mission. I'm not going to necessarily advise everybody get this, but it is for those people in particular that maybe they don't have the mods to really help push through that ability, that unlock mission, and it will still be useful in other battles as well. So it reads this. In territory battles, the next time Jedi Knight Cal Kestis uses Windmill Defense, he recovers 50% health and protection and gives all allies protection up, 20% stacking for 2 turns for each use of Whirlwind Slam since the last use of Whirlwind Defense. So basically, gives you massive amounts of health and protection recovery and additional protection for your allies, particularly your Seer Jundra in this case, to keep them alive, because that's the one thing that can really mess up those runs. If Jedi Knight Cal Kestis didn't have configuration double-bladed at the start of his turn, instead, all allies are going to gain advantage for 4 turns, stun all enemies for 1 turn, and inflict armor shred for the rest of the encounter. Now, typically speaking, you won't have that configuration, so you'll be swapping between the configurations. So most of the times you've got an AoE stun as well as an armor shred, which is still really useful in passing advantage, just a little bit more damage output, right? So this one alone gives such a big boost to what you are capable of doing in that Zepho mission, and makes the modding a lot easier to manage. So if you're particularly struggling with that guild unlock for Zepho, consider Whirlwind Slam. It will make your life easier. Now you can do the other abilities for Cal Kestis here. They are pretty good, and generally speaking I would probably go leadership. The only reason you don't do the leadership first, in my opinion, is if you're doing this for the Zepho mission, you can't take Cal as a leader. In every other mission, if you use Cal's leadership, it's monstrous. It's so powerful. You can basically take in trash tier Jedi and win. It doesn't even have to be Jedi, that's the beauty of it. So here it is. At the start of battle, allies gain 100% max health and protection, and 300% of Jedi Knight Cal Kestis' defense. Huge boost. At the start of each encounter, allies gain 25% turn meter and frenzy for 2 turns, Frenzy is a buff that gives you 100% turn meter when allies use a special ability. So more turn meter at the start, and Frenzy, which means you're going to take bonus, it's not bonus turns, it's 100% turn meter, but it's very similar, right? Defeated enemies cannot be revived, and stacks of Impetuous persist across encounters. So if you get to Impetuous Assault, it's essentially a one-hit insta-kill, but it requires you to get 30 stacks of Impetuous. Those are lost between waves unless you've got that Leadership Omicron. With that Leadership Omicron, it means you can preload your Impetuous, go into the next round, and immediately insta-kill. Very, very powerful Omicron. And finally, Impetuous Assault is actually also another very, very powerful Omicron. This one is on his big hit, so you need to get to 30 stacks of Impetuous in order to use it. In territory battles, Impetuous Assault deals an additional 10% of the target's maximum health per Jedi Knight Cal Kestis' relic amplifier levels. So if you've got him at R8, you'll do an extra 80% max health damage, which is huge. After Impetuous Assault is used, Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, his attacks ignore protection, and all allies are going to gain 300% of his base offense for the rest of the battle. It's very, very powerful. But again, for early game, get Whirlwind Slam. If you really want to use it long term, also get the Leadership, and finally Impetuous Assault if you really want to. I'm not advising you actually put those on. This was just an honourable mention. And that is going to about do it, ladies and gentlemen, for our Omicron breakdown for the early game. Let me know what your thoughts are, and tell me which Omicrons I missed that you are particularly fond of, so other people can read it in the comments section. Make sure you give me a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you all in the very next video. Peace out, and may the Force be with you.